By the off chance you couldn't tell, this is my sort of follow-up video on the Hellboy reboot, although you don't really have to watch the previous video to understand this. Now it's a pretty known fact at this point that the Hellboy reboot, or what was previously known as Rise of the Blood Queen, has been rather quiet through these past few months. There hasn't been any talks about this movie, there hasn't been any official clips, trailers, pictures or anything. And because Lionsgate have been incredibly quiet about this Hellboy reboot, it did raise a lot of questions on what's even going to happen with this film. Although there is a tiny bit of info that I did miss out from the previous video. And I do want to give a huge shout out to Frylock for letting me know about a tweet that David Harper wrote in relation to the reboot. Because when it comes down to Twitter, I don't even keep up. Because just before or during this year's San Diego Comic-Con, David Harper had went onto Twitter and did celebrate the 20th anniversary of the Hellboy franchise. But then just after that, he did fakely leave out a cryptic clue in that we will get to see some news in relation to the Hellboy reboot during this year's New York Comic-Con, in which will take place early October. And when you do take a step back and think about all of this and how Lionsgate have been incredibly quiet about the Hellboy reboot, only to release new material during this year's New York Comic Con, this to me is an ingenious idea and they know exactly what they're doing. Because when you look at 2018 as a whole, it is crammed with comic book movies. And now that we're on August 2018, at the time of this recording at least, you would know that at this point all of the big superhero films are gone. And therefore Hellboy would not be overshadowed by those big films such as Infinity War, Black Panther or Deadpool 2. And as for the other films that are going to be coming out later this year, they are much smaller movies in terms of scope. And the remaining comic book films of 2018, we do have Venom, which is probably going to be a smaller scale film anyway, regardless on whether or not this film is going to be rated R. And then we also have Aquaman, which is debatably the most anticipated comic book film that has yet to be seen, but even then I highly doubt that this is going to be a game changer. And we even have Spider-Man Into the Spider-Verse, which most animated movies tend to be a lot smaller in terms of scope and how they normally do at the box office. But going back to the point of Hellboy's presence in New York Comic Con, this is such a smart idea on their end because not only is New York Comic Con relatively smaller in comparison to San Diego Comic Con, but as far as my knowledge goes, none of the big companies are really pushing towards anything during this year's New York Comic Con, and so therefore, Hellboy and Lionsgate do have a cutting edge. And if they do pump out a trailer in time for New York Comic Con, then they could easily attach the trailer to either Venom or even Halloween 2018, given how both movies will be released on October. But on top of all of that, the fact that the Hellboy reboot will be released on January next year is ingenious within itself. Because if the film was to be released on either October, November or December, then Hellboy would be competing with a lot of other comic book movies such as Venom, Aquaman and Into the Spider-Verse, which admittedly are bigger films than Hellboy itself. But when it comes down to the January slot, the month is mostly infested with crappy movies and there's really no competition at all. And the fact that Hellboy is taking advantage of this in a similar fashion to how Deadpool 1 took advantage of the February slot, in theory this could be a huge win for Hellboy. And if all of this lines up, then I really have to tip my hat towards Hellboy and Lionsgate, because this is incredibly tactical. So what are your current thoughts on the Hellboy reboot? Are you still incredibly excited into seeing a new take on the character, or would you much rather prefer a Hellboy 3? Comment below and share some thoughts. And as always, thank you guys for watching this video, please like and subscribe, take care and have a good one.